For century-old spines like gnarly vines and vineyards for lilac diamonds, to the godlike elders for our aging wines and their timeless guidance. This one's for floral notes sung by the brown folks, for the flower vendor, the one that puts the rose in rosary, for a gorgeous culture that rose from dirt so openly, for arms that open like blossoms. For womb-like palms that deliver the grape from bondage and carry it from conception to fruition, and beyond the goblet for the seed that dreams itself, larger than grapes, and transcends wing, song, couplet, and sonnet, to cherry pickers like rebels with barreled chest, waging war with their wages, who hurl their dreams like Molotov cocktails into our amber waves of grain, whose knuckles are gnarled and stained, for the work of a dreamer is stainless and honest. So this one's for freedom. The reason I'm sharing this with you today is because if we're going to talk about the U.S. farm system, then we should talk about the people working on these farms day in and day out. It is estimated that 50 to 70% of our U.S. farm workers are legal immigrants. So what does it mean if our food system is reliant on a futile immigration system? Mexican Central American immigration to the U.S. exploded preceding the NAFTA trade agreement. The agreement slashed Mexico corn tariffs, which allows corn and other food products to be imported into Latin America without increasing the price of the goods. However, it left U.S. farm subsidies completely intact. Which means we could produce many of these food products more cheaply, and this in turn flooded Latin American markets, putting many farmers out of business. Within the first 7 years of NAFTA, the price of corn produced in Mexico plummeted by 66%, and Mexican immigration to the U.S. doubled. So we have a surge in Mexican immigration to the U.S. with a trade deal that shuts down hundreds of farms and leaves many out of work in Mexico and Central America. So what does it look like to legally immigrate to the U.S.? Current immigration issues 675,000 visas out a year. However, to apply these visas, most of the time you need higher education or must need to be above the poverty line. It costs $1,000 and can take up to 2 to 3 years to process. Also, the annual diversity visa program, which issues another 55,000 green cards. However, it excludes people from Mexico. There's, however, something called the H-2A, the Temporary Agricultural Work Visa. It allows U.S. farms to apply for foreign workers to do temporary farm work known as migrant farming. 94% of these visas are issued to Mexico. Only 52% of these workers are ever shown a job description, and 40% of the workers have to take out a pre-employment loan to get to the U.S. They are deported after their contract ends. Go. On average, these migrant farmers bring in an annual income of $12,000 to $14,000. 1/3 are paid below minimum wage. According to the Department of Labor's National Agricultural Work Survey, it is the second lowest paying job in the U.S., barely above domestic labor. Most lack health insurance and many work long hours. More than half of these respondents report working more than 40 hours a week without overtime pay. Farm work is one of the few fields that is excluded from federal work labor laws. This means that farm workers do not have the right to unionize, they do not get paid overtime, for sick leave, they're not required to have health insurance, and children can start working on these farms at age 12. Because of pesticide use, farm workers suffer from the highest risk of toxic chemical injuries and skin disorders in this country. Only 10% of farm workers report having employer-provided health insurance. What would our agricultural system look like without illegal immigration? I want to take a look at this image. Right now, for every dollar food product sold, farmers on average see 7.8 cents of it. Of the 7.8 cents per dollar farmers receive, agricultural labor accounts for 1.6, roughly 20% of fixed labor cost for large farms. Labor cost for fruit and vegetable farms ranges more from 35 to 50%. A 2014 analysis by World Agricultural Economics predicts that this 1.6 cents farmers now earn of the dollar would turn into 5 to 6 cents if U.S. citizens worked these jobs. This would increase labor costs for farmers by 80 to 160%, putting many small and medium-sized farms out of business. The dairy industry would also greatly suffer. A study commissioned by the dairy industry suggested that if federal labor and immigration policy reduced the amount of illegal immigrants by 50%, more than 3,500 dairy farms would close, leading to a big drop in milk production and a spike in prices of 30%. Total elimination of immigrant labor would increase milk prices by 90%. It is predicted with increased American food prices, imports would become extremely competitive. Grocery stores may begin becoming more globalized as a result of increased labor costs and food prices. A study conducted by AFBF, Farm Labor Study Immigration Reform, found that when comparing the 2-year periods between 2000 and 2010, in which migrant farm labor decreased by more than 50% due to immigration reform, labor-intensive farming and fresh produce consumed in America that was imported rose by 73.9%. This loss of workers accounted for $1.3 billion in farm income that wasn't realized that year and translated to a $3.3 billion in missed GDP growth. Due to impacts on current immigration reform and increased deportations, we can already see the negative ramifications on our environment and our farms. In 2 California counties alone, it has cost us $13 million. Considering that our agricultural system is reliant on immigrant labor, some industries not being able to survive without it, that immigrant farm labor makes food affordable for people who otherwise might not be able to afford it. Considering it increases our GDP, it decreases food waste and environmental degradation by keeping food more local. How is it possible that so many Americans can have such harsh views on illegal immigrants, such that these immigrants are stealing U.S. jobs? In reality, U.S. citizens will not take these jobs. In North Carolina, it is estimated that 130,000 people are unemployed each year. When these workers were referred to the NC Growers Association, 245 people applied. Of these 245 people who were hired, only 163, 66% actually showed up to the first day. Only 7 people made it through the entire growing season. Compared to migrant farmers, in which 90% make it to the end of the grower season. Even in California, where farm workers are paid $15 an hour, 9 in 10 of them are still immigrants, 6 out of 10 are legal immigrants, and it is estimated that 2% of the applicants for these jobs are U.S. citizens. We have a lack of American workers willing to do the strenuous work of farm labor. A broken farm system that can barely afford to pay its workers minimum wage has become almost fully reliant on illegal immigration. So how can farmers pay their workers a livable wage that allows them to have a quality of life? It's going to start by cutting out the middlemen. This means buying your food from the most direct source, whether that's shopping at the farmer's market or buying from the local co-op that actually represents the humane and ethical cost of food. If that means eating out less, but most importantly remembering that every time you're buying a food product, you are voting for that farmer, his ethics, and his business to stay alive.